Hey, welcome back to another, episode of the Bookkeeping Blueprint podcast. We are coaching businesses for success. I'm here with Megan and I'm Sherry. So I know sometimes it's hard to pick up voices if you're listening to the podcast without seeing us. If you want to see us, you can join us live. We go live every Thursday. But you can also find replays of the podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all of those good things. If you are joining us live, or if you know that you have a question relating to growing your bookkeeping business, these calls, the reason we do this is me and Megan share all of the behind the scenes to our bookkeeping businesses. What's working, what's not, how we got to six figures. Was it hard? How long did it take? All of those things were pretty much open books. And I do think that if you attended this call every week alone, in conjunction with your bookkeeping education, wherever you might be getting that, if you're with us in the Bookkeeping Blueprint Fast Start or another program, or you've been a part of another program in the past, you could very well achieve your goals. Q&A happens at the end of every call. So if you have questions and you know that you don't want to attend live or you're going to miss the call, feel free to post those in the group. We have a section dedicated to your questions that we will answer at the end of the call. So if you want to go back and listen to the replay, feel free to do that. And if you are listening on Facebook, feel free to join us via the Zoom link. If not, we will watch the comments in Facebook as well. This week, we have one of the students saying, "The tides are changing, y'all. I'm so excited." She met with a retiring bookkeeper and that meeting went well. So that retiring bookkeeper, as I talked to the student and kind of followed up, is at capacity and is referring new clients to one of our bookkeepers. She also made some great strides with networking. And it's one of those moments that I think we just need to celebrate all wins, whether it's landing clients or making a shift in your business. And the reason I wanted to share this was she said at the very bottom, "Either way, I can feel a major shift happening." And I remember a time in my business where I called Megan and I was so frustrated with my business. And I had a moment like this where then I finally did, I changed some things about what I was doing. And I did have a moment of, oh my, there's a major shift happening in my business. I am so grateful. So, and I know Megan remembers that. Megan, have you ever had a major shift happen where you're like, oh, finally, I'm doing it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, especially when clients start, like you continue to do your marketing, Facebook, it seems like it's always can take forever sometimes, especially if you're not doing direct messaging and stuff like that, because you're kind of waiting on people to reach out to you and stuff. And then it's like once they just start coming in, it's usually like one right after another, and it's like, okay, now things are really happening.
Yeah. And I think just being patient, and I know this
Yeah,
individual was very patient in her effort, and I think she's going to
most
see the
definitely.
fruit of that this year based on just her trajectory and what we see on as average bookkeepers.
Yep.
If you would like to add our events to your calendar, and you're watching on YouTube or live, there is a QR code where you can get that those events. There should also be a link in the show notes if you're looking for that as well. Today, we've been asked multiple times, should I provide virtual assistant services? So the last question was phrased, "I'm curious, do any of you provide virtual assistant services in addition to bookkeeping?" And when I saw this question was it about a month ago, we did an episode on distractions in a bookkeeping business, and we were specifically talking about advisory services and how that could be a distraction, or offering tax services or tax strategy, some sort of other service. And I didn't even think about virtual assistants as being a distraction. And so when I saw this, I was like, that's the other end of the spectrum. That is another distraction. But on the same side, I recognize that, and let me know if you have thought about offering virtual assistant services. So that's like any sort of just admin services to your clients, whether that's making phone calls, doing collections, answering emails, scheduling, things like that. I know I kind of did have someone who kind of treated me like a virtual assistant when I started, and I was just trying to get any income in the door and then realized I don't want to do that. So let me know if you're doing that. If you've thought about it in the comments, wherever you're listening, let me know. Is that something you want to do? Is it something you feel like you have to do? Is that something you're just doing because you love it? And I think if it's something that you're doing because you're skilled at it, because some people are really skilled at virtual assistant service, like, and that's just not how my brain works. And so, like, I love my virtual assistant that works with me. I know my sister has a lot of virtual assistant qualities. Like, it is a skill. And so I just want to note, like, before I dive into some of the pros and cons of virtual assistant services, as you're starting your business, you have grand freedom to craft a business that you love. You're doing what you want to be doing, and that provides a living, or more than living wage for your family, that blesses your family beyond belief. And virtual assistant services can actually be that. So know that you have freedom, you have grace. If that is your skill set, walk completely into it, embrace it. But what we typically see is when someone's asking this, they're hesitant for some reason. They've stalled in getting clients in their bookkeeping business, or they've had a really frustrating start. And so they haven't fully committed to their bookkeeping business, and they're looking for, how can I grow this thing faster? And they're trying to find, what is it that would grow this faster? And what we often see is the fastest way to grow it is to double down on it. So, whether you should expand into virtual assistants alongside bookkeeping, I think you should, if that is your skill set, absolutely. But I want to address kind of the elephant in the room that comes with it. The notion that offering virtual assistant services alongside bookkeeping is somehow necessary for success. The truth is, in fact, it's not. So you can build a thriving bookkeeping business just on bookkeeping alone. And Megan, have you done virtual? I know I did. I took it was still kind of accounting basic, like in the accounting realm of virtual assistant services, but do you do any virtual assistant for any of your clients?
I do not. In the beginning of my business, I did have a couple of people reach out for things along those lines. But one thing that like I saw really quickly was that I knew how much money I could make hourly doing the bookkeeping, and that if I did those services, I'd be taken away from that. So I made sure that like even the ones that were like, hey, can you filter phone calls, whatever the case is. It was like, yeah, sure, but this is what my hourly rate is. You can probably find somebody to do it a lot cheaper than that. So, in doing that, because I mean, there was one point in my business where it was like I had a client that I was going to his office and like filing paperwork or whatever. And it's like, if you really want to pay me hourly to do this, then this is my hourly rate. So if I'm going to get paid the same thing, fine, but I know you can do it for cheaper. And though, like those things they did, they either found somebody else right away, or the one that I was doing things like that for, like they realized quickly, hey, I can hire somebody for a cheaper rate to do these things.
Yeah. And we also see, so like, I think that's a good point, because a virtual assistant, you're typically like, even in our businesses, right? We have our hourly rate. If we're looking for a virtual assistant, we're looking to pay someone less than our hourly rate is. The same is
Right.
true for their business, or that,
Yep.
things like that. So, absolutely. And that's not to say that you cannot be like an executive virtual assistant where your rate is $100 an hour and you are doing some really important things, some really valuable things for that client, where your rate is that high. Often that's not what clients are coming to us for. The first task, or like the lower level virtual assistant tasks, like email management, things like that. So if you are going to do this, take this away. If you are going to step into virtual assistant, the key might be to figure out what service that you provide that's executive virtual assistant services. So you're going to do it faster, more efficient than a virtual assistant would do. But it is not necessary in order to have a thriving multiple six-figure bookkeeping business. I think what we see a lot of times is if someone is offering virtual services, then the bookkeeping is just another virtual assistant task, which means the assumption is you're not doing that financial statement review. You're not giving them the financial records that they really want. They're going to be assuming you're just coding transactions. So normally what virtual assistants do if they're doing bookkeeping, they're just coding transactions, maybe reconciling, not looking for those consistencies, the comparison sake of the financials that as the service I provide, I'm looking to say, hey, by the way, client, you missed your rent payment last month. Did you realize I didn't go through? Because I'm looking at the financials on a month-to-month basis, and I'm going to look to see, did I miss the rent payment? No, I didn't miss the rent payment. So, hey, client, I just want to let you know in the summary of the financials, your rent payment didn't come through, but hey, I already looked. Just so you know, it did come out already. The following month, you paid it twice. So when you look at the financials, you're going to see it miss. You're going to see it hit twice in their following month. And because you're cash, you're going to see it hit twice next month and not at all this month. So I go ahead and, hit those things off at the pass. So the clients know what they're looking, they know what they're getting, and they know that I have their back from a capturing expense standpoint, making sure their financials are tax ready, making sure that they're claiming all of the deductions that they possibly can from a financial perspective, as much as I have access to. So one of the pitfalls of doing virtual assistants, to summarize that, is you almost dilute the bookkeeping focus of your business. You degrade it from offering the $100 an hour rate that we're targeting. You almost dilute it down to a $30 to $50 an hour service because you're just their hands to get it done. Does that make sense? Let me know if it's not, and I will join you in the comments and answer. So I would, instead of spreading yourself thin, offering this service and that service where you're not necessarily systematizing the service as a whole that you're offering, I would rather see bookkeepers double down saying, I am going to offer this service. This is what it looks like. This is the product I am offering, and position themselves as a trusted authority in that space. And this is why niching is so great, because you're getting to approach clients with, I do bookkeeping for this industry and I do it all day long. So I know what to look for. I know what is standard in that industry. You don't have to, obviously, it's just a perk. So if you're looking to position yourself as a trusted authority, what is that for how you're marketing? It might not be your niche, it might be local. You might, I know Arizona has some really cool state taxes that you might want to pay attention to, right? We've seen bookkeepers who just simply need to weed out distractions as they go all in into their business and double down on the marketing. When we see bookkeepers fully commit to their business, and I mean fully commit. So when I started my business, I was working really part-time. So about 10 hours a month, doing about 40,000 a year. I was super content with that. That is part-time. It wasn't quite it was definitely not what I was making full-time, but it was plenty to add as a side income. But shortly after that, I needed to take the business full-time. So I needed to take it to across the six-figure mark to replace my husband's income. And well above six figures is where I needed to go to be able to take home six figures, right? I did that in about a span of 4 to 5 months. Well, I did most of it in about a 4 to 5 month period. I hit 10 to 12,000 a month, because I doubled down on marketing and got really focused on okay, I'm going to grow this thing. It wasn't that I didn't, like, I just wasn't looking to do that before. I was a full, like, I had two under two, did not need to, did not want to. But once I needed to, I did that between the months of June and August. And just if anyone's listening, those are not hot months to market. They were hot months, but they are not months where everyone's looking for bookkeepers. It's not tax season. That is considered a slow period. So I even did that in a slow period because I got really laser focused on what I was about, where I was headed, what I was doing. Believe me and Megan when we say that running a six-figure bookkeeping business is entirely achievable without venturing into the realm of other services such as virtual assistant services. You can have bread and butter clients. They're our favorite clients. You do the same thing every month. They're not complicated. They're our product. If we were to productize our services, we call those our bread and butter clients. These are our clients that fit this basic product that we're providing. We think that you can do that by honing your skills, investing in strong client relationships, and consistently delivering exceptional results, whether that is making the financials really easy to read for them or just giving them the data that they need. Maybe that's as simple as making sure they have financials every month because it's the first time in the whole 10 years that they've had the business that a bookkeeper is finally giving them financials every month to look at. I promise you it's more common for bookkeepers to not give monthly financials than it is common. So you can be exceptional simply by showing up every month and doing what you said you were going to do. Is that fair? This is also how the average client that has signed on with me, so my experience in the last 10 months has signed on at an average rate of about $14.60 per month. Okay, so that's working on the service, working on productizing and getting really clear on my marketing message. So anyway, I hope that this little segment really helps you understand. It obviously doesn't help you understand what virtual assistant services are. If you want me to answer that, let me know. If you're listening on Facebook, let me know. But it's ultimately up to you to decide the direction of your business. Remember that there's value in staying true to bookkeeping, prioritizing accuracy, integrity, expertise, which are the three I prioritize. And I promise you can build a business that stands the test of time, that's truly stable. And you're not going to experience the waves of the economy the same way. You will to some degree. You'll see it happening, but your business isn't going to drastically fall out from underneath you, typically speaking. So, Megan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I don't believe so. We have a question on Facebook. Are you talking about the monthly reports, P&L, and other reports? So
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
I'm considering that part of the deliverability, like the deliverables for every month. I think you'd be surprised at how many bookkeepers don't send those every month. I don't know when she asked that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It just popped up on my phone, so I don't know which part that was about, but
Gotcha. Yeah, let me know if that answers it. If it doesn't, feel free to ask again. We'll catch it this time. But yeah, I'm referring to like the reports that a bookkeeper would give, or typically, unless they're paying for additional reports. So if they're accrual, you would also send the accounts receivable aging, the accounts payable aging. You might send a month over month report. You might send a year over year report. You might send additional reports, is what I'm getting at, if they're paying for a higher level of service. And that's where you take the exceptional service up a notch. One thing I also used to do, and we have a template in the Bookkeeper blueprint of exactly what I used to do. I no longer do it just because of I don't want to anymore. I want to do it differently. Anyway, but when I started, I got immense, really good feedback from this report. Actually, no, it wasn't valued. My clients were too tiny. I think now it would be valued differently, but at that point, my clients were like $100 a month because I'd kind of made some mistakes in quoting. I'd gone backwards in quoting, and they were like, "If you're doing this, we're paying you too much. We don't need this." And so, like, I had several of them like, "We want to go down a tier," because I like started offering too much value for the price, and that really surprised me. But I got really good feedback on this report. It's a Canva financial document, and it has some basic KPIs in it, and it analyzes their P&L. So I walk you through in that template how to analyze the P&L, how to analyze the balance sheet to give the client very clear, here's what's going on in your business this month. Here's why this changed. You hired a contractor, so your monthly expenses are more, or whatever it was. Like I walk you through this like really cool, just something kind of similar to what we would have done at the CPA firm, but on a monthly basis in a very condensed way, giving them very clear, this is what's going on in my business. And I got exceptional feedback from that. So I do have that as a template for you guys. I really enjoyed giving it to my clients. Just wasn't valued for the product that I had been marketing at that point in time. So I don't know if I'd give it to a client who's paying 300 or under. I think it would be using that report if you're looking to get your rate above 500, above 1,000, maybe even 1,500 on average a month. You can use that report to help do that. Okay, I hope that answers her question.
Yeah, she said thank you. You answered her question.
Cool. And so, yeah, just to elaborate on what virtual assistant services are, virtual assistant services are your contract. Typically, it's your contract with someone, 10 hours a week. This could be social media management. Maybe you're hiring a service to just do social media management, or you're providing social media management. That can be an example of virtual assistant. And that is similar to the world of bookkeeping. You can find a virtual assistant to do social media management for you, or you can find an agency doing social media management. Most often, you're going to go to an agency because you know that they know what they're doing and you don't have to train. If you want to pay less, you typically go to a virtual assistant to do it because you can train them on how you want it done. And the expectation is they're going to spend less hours for lower cost than the agency would cost. So you might start to view yourself as an agency if you're not already your bookkeeping firm as an agency or a firm. I kind of started using the word firm because of just the way I see it. And it's not just me working on the books anymore. Virtual assistant services could be email management. It could be pulling down files, organizing files. Megan mentioned filing documents. So she went to a client's office to file documents at one point. For me at one point, and guys, it was really short-lived. It was like 2 hours a week. I did it for a few months and was like, and part of me, I didn't want to let it go because I said, hey, I'm going to do this for you. And then I was like, why am I doing this? Because for 2 hours a week, it was like broken up into 10-minute increments of hurry, respond to this email, put it in this folder. And I'm like, I can't jump that quickly. Like my business just needed to be monthly reports that we can do weekly. I can do it at night. I can do it during the day. I can do it whenever I have time. Not if you say jump, jump. And that doesn't mean that if you want to offer virtual assistants, do you have to jump when they say jump? You can very well systematize that service as well. Okay. Well, there's that.
She also just asked, where can we find this report? So I think everything was to popping up later. So I think that was the one you were talking about.
The report in Canva, the Canva report.
Yeah, I think so.
So that is in the Bookkeeper Blueprint under monthly reports. There's like a Canva report in that section. If you want the link directly, like if you, are they in the Bookkeeper Blueprint? Because I can give them the link directly to it.
No, I don't think she's in the Bookkeeper blueprint.
Okay. But yeah, that's one of the templates that we have physically in the Bookkeeper blueprint. We have a lot of templates. That is one of them. So it has a cover letter and then how to set it up. So, and the direct Canva template, so you don't have to recreate it. So, and you can brand it to your colors, all of those things. I have a lot of stuff in Canva that you can brand to your own colors, website. If you want to do like a Canva website, I have a template for you for bookkeeping where you can just copy and paste. You would put your domain in, you would change your colors, your branding, and publish that as well. So I went big on templates. So the Bookkeeper Blueprint is ultimately a really good resource. It's a resource. So it has the templates, it has marketing ideas, it has all of those things, and then it has training. So you have the bookkeeping fundamentals that you can reference, and then you have QuickBooks trainings that you can reference if you're working at 11 o'clock at night and you're like, how do I click this button? How do I match this bill? And it would walk you through how to do those things. Good question. Okay, if you haven't become an affiliate for the Bookkeeper Blueprint and you want to, Megan, I forgot to tell you to grab it.
That's okay, I'm grabbing it.
Megan is going to drop it in probably Facebook and the chat if you want that. So you can grab that if you're like, hey, I would love to do that. There's some payout options for that. So you'll get emails about all of that. So if you have more questions, but if you're interested in that, Megan has the link there. And I didn't see any Q&As this week in the post, but if you have them, now is a great time to ask them. And Jennifer, I know you're on, so if you have additional questions, feel free to chime back in at any point. I know it's been a fun couple of months going into tax season. I feel like every year it gets better for me. Like as I'm not going to do that again next year. Or I'm going to, like you encounter things that you're like, oh, I guess I wasn't completely prepared for that. And all of that, we now have templates for in the Bookkeeper Blueprint. So you have the potential to have less of those surprises. I think those surprises happen when you're like, oh, hey, there's this checklist. I don't need it yet. Then it happens and you're like, oh, I wish I had set that up, but you had no context for needing it. So those are always things that we're improving. For sure. Megan, how long did you do the virtual assistant thing for?
Not long at all.
Like
maybe 2 months max. Yeah. It wasn't long.
It just wasn't like, and I think that's like when you're starting a bookkeeping business. I know my background was I started in business in 2014. I started out in Amazon e-commerce and Etsy and all of those things, Shopify, and built a business. Decided I didn't have time for that, shut it down. But like I've learned over the past 10 years that everything works for your good. So even if you have the question, if you're like, man, I've really spent 2 months and I really don't want to be doing this, you didn't know that before. You had to, so because you said yes, you clearly had to walk through it to know that you didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
To walk through like, what do I really want out of this business? And just, I think Abby said it so well. One of our coaches, it was in our January meeting. She said, I don't do bookkeeping because I love it. She's like, I don't want to do bookkeeping. She said, I do bookkeeping because of what it allows me to do in my life. So for her specifically, it was being present with her kids and being able to attend events and things like that. Where do you start when you want to hire a contractor, and how do you determine pricing and processes? That is a loaded question. It's a good question.
But a good one, yeah, for
it's
sure.
A good question. So there are a lot of ways Megan, I'm gonna share kind of my experience and let me chime in or take over at any point that you want.
Okay.
Um, I I started. Let me tell you my journey, and I'll make it quick. But I started on Upwork the first couple of hires. So I was in business for like 6 months, and I had two under two, and I was pregnant with my third, which is crazy. I'm so thankful for that. But like that was a crazy season, and I had gotten a cleanup job, and I quoted him 2,800, and he said yes. And I'm like, okay, well, I could do it, but it was during tax season, and I just felt like I didn't have the time. And so I went to Upwork and put a post up, said, can I find anyone? I did find someone. Her name was Brittany, and she jumped right into it, got it done. It was a super risky situation. Like, I hadn't worked with her before. It could have backfired. I did the interview. I asked really good questions. Thankfully, she was able to get it done. And she had like just gotten through like all of the pro advisors. She had some experience, but she was just starting her bookkeeping business, I think. And so her and I think she had a background similar to mine that I was able to say, yes, I trust you to do this. She knocked it out really quickly. I think I paid her $800 for it. And so I made $2,000 for showing up to the client and reviewing the financials. A test well done. But over the years, like it hasn't always worked out that way. So I don't hire from Facebook. I go outside of Facebook because, well, of lots of reasons. I'm on Facebook. I kind of want a different pool, I guess. So I typically don't go through Facebook. I go through Upwork. I've done that a couple of times. So my current contractor that does a lot of work with me, again, I hired her shortly after hiring Brittany. Brittany went on to do her own bookkeeping business. My next contractor, she's been with me almost since. She took a break for a little bit, and then she's been with me since. And I just give her more and more. And she came to me a couple of months ago and was like, hey, I need more hours, or I would love more hours. And I was like, great. So I gave her more hours. What I have learned though is, and so then I spent like the entire last year, and Megan saw this really up close and personal because we did it kind of in both businesses. I didn't mean to do it with both, but I definitely did it in mine, where I would hire someone for like 2 hours a week or to do one task. And I just kind of practiced hiring because I realized I wasn't that good at it. So I just practiced it and said, hey, this is what I'm looking for you to do. And it really helped me understand, how do I give them the SOP that makes it easy for me, if I'm looking for like an ad hoc thing or whatever. Um, I think Megan would agree. We've talked about this a couple of times on podcasts, that especially if it's a bookkeeping client or if it's a task in general, we want to do it first. We want to know exactly what we expect. We want to document it, whether it's written SOP or video SOP, and be able to tell that person, please do this, this, and this. No guessing, no guesswork, no reading our minds. Just here's task A. They're cleaned up. Or if they're not cleaned up, it's, I need you to do this specific thing. And this is how to do it. So, like, I was working with someone yesterday on QuickBooks payments, matching payments to deposits and going through that undeposited fund cycle. I would record a video saying, hey, here's these payments. Here's the list. I want you to go through these. And I would probably lead them through the bookkeeping cleanup versus saying, hey, here's the cleanup, go do it. Because I might find some very interesting things in it. And it definitely depends on their level. Like if I had a client and Megan said, hey, I have time this week, and I'm like, I don't have time. Who wants this? And she was like, hey, I want this. I would give it to Megan in a heartbeat. Now Megan is full. I don't give her, like, we don't typically exchange work, but just for an example, like if I knew her abilities were, or his abilities were top notch, absolutely. What we find, and what we want you to be careful of, and anyone listening to this, is someone who's saying all the right things, and then immediately you see red flags, whether that's not being completely honest with their time, what they're working on, when they're going to get it done, consistently missing deadlines. Going MIA is the biggest issue we see, next to not doing the work right. But going MIA is the biggest thing. So part of your processes would be, how often do you expect to hear from them? I expect to hear from my people every week, multiple times typically, but I expect to see them working, see their time entered into Keeper. I think I have one client that can truly be done monthly because we don't get stuff until the end of the month anyway. I don't expect to hear from that contractor every week. I do expect to hear from her multiple times at the very beginning of the month, though, until the financials are done. So there might be 2 to 3 weeks where I don't hear from her, and then I would expect to hear from her again at the beginning of the month. And so setting those expectations would be really helpful. And they can't read your mind, so being very clear. So I like to kind of hire quickly, but I fire quickly. So hire with intention, hire slowly, as you need to. Don't hire five contractors at the same time. I would really have a process in place. As far as pricing, Megan, I was asked about your pricing yesterday, and the person that had asked was like, man, I wish I had talked to you the day before, because typically we say, you say 10% transactions, like coding transactions from the bank feed, getting them in or whatever that is.
Right.
10% reconciling.
Correct.
And then 10% reviewing.
Yep.
And that is the number one thing that's misunderstood. So they hear Megan say, and I'm speaking for you now, they from what I've seen happen with this is, and I've done it too. This is how I know to look for it now. We hear 30% in total. And we're like, okay, yeah, you're going to code transactions, you're going to reconcile. Great, 30%. And we forget how much work it takes to review the financials. So we expect them, if we're paying 30% to a contractor, we expect the financials to come to us with questions asked me. I expect questions kind of asked to the client already, because I have a system I train the contractors on. And then I expect to not go find rent coded to tools or vice versa, right? Like really silly stuff that just got missed, or I would expect things to be consistent. Like I expect there to be a review done first. I don't expect it to be perfect, because I'm always going to find something. My financial brain finds something that's like, we've been doing it that way for 3 months. That's odd. Like where I just look at something differently and I'm like, why didn't we change? Like yesterday I found something and I'm like, why didn't we change the chart of accounts name to say something else if we made this change? Because it didn't reflect what was going on in the financials. And I was like, that's odd. I'd probably been doing that for 3 to 6 months. And I'm like, I just didn't notice it because I was looking for other things. And because those things had been resolved, I now looked at something else and was like, oh, that needs to be improved. So we're always looking for improvement. So I don't expect the contractor to get it perfect. I want to train them to think like me and to catch the things I catch. But that comes over time. And that's where I say like 18 months. That comes over time. And one of the contractor that's been with me, she's been with me about 18 months now consistently. In total, probably about 2 years. She asked some really good questions, probably because I've asked her, and she has just a background too. So like between the two of it, it's like I'm pretty much getting the questions I would be asking anyway from her, before I even have to ask. And sometimes it's, hey, I have this question. And I'm like, I would have had that question too. I have to go look. I have to go investigate that question. Those are the questions. That's when you know you've gotten the review process down, because now at some point, the next 18 months, it's getting her ahead of me to be able to equip and train to how do I answer that question? Where do I find that information? How do I go about navigating, asking the client this other thing, doing the research, doing the financial? Does that make sense? Like, I don't think it all comes at once. I think there is degrees of training. Um, in that question yesterday where we talked about pricing, my contractor, my main one, is paid hourly. And that started because previously I had paid her according to Megan's percentages. That project finished and I hired her just to do a couple of things for me. So payroll and like things like that. So it started out with just payroll only. It led to coding the transactions, which led to reconciling, which then logically led to reviewing, which then led to communicating the clients, which then led taking on a whole stack of clients. So um, I've left her at hourly. We have another student who is currently, I've seen her in the past couple of months. We've been talking about it this week, where she has consistently changed her pricing with the contractors, where she tried something, it didn't work. So she tried something else. It didn't actually work. So try two. Logically, she thought it through. She tried her best. It just didn't work. It like created additional problems that she didn't see until she tried it. And I think those are okay things to do. Because what she found when she changed it the second time was the level of motivation. So at 30%, the level of motivation to keep the efficiency up might not be there. So she had moved to like a commission based model, not necessarily percentage, but it was still a percentage. And then she had to shuffle work. And it was like, well, who gets the money? Like, because they both worked on it. So those models make it easier for me to do hourly because it's not complicated. I can track their time in Keeper. I can see how long the client is taking us, which allows me to say this client either needs to go or we need to increase the price because the scope has increased and because she's really good at tracking her time. I'm awful at it, which is why I can't do VA services. Like I was just it was so bad. Like keeping track of my time stresses me. I would rather do it for short months to like see, how much. And I loosely do because I have benchmarks on like I want to be working on this for X many hours a week. So I have benchmarks throughout the week where I will like keep track of like what I did, but I don't want to like go into it. Does that make sense? So I keep track of my time, but loosely, so that it's not like I left Keeper running and now it's like 16 hours inside Keeper because I went to go to dinner. Um, what I also realized is if your goal is like 10,000 a month or 20,000 a month, 10,000 as an easy number and it's a popular number that we hear. If you hire someone at, I'm going to check my math by writing it down. So let's say $30 an hour because you're looking for someone. My principle is King Solomon hired the best of the best, right? And they're working 20 hours a week. Jennifer, how many hours do you think you're like? You might not be looking at hourly, but for kicks and giggles, like my workload at six figures is about 20 hours of really solid bookkeeping. And it's really under that, but let's say it's 20. Oh, I saw you
Yeah,
unmute.
go ahead and go with that. I don't have a good
Okay.
number.
Let's say it's 20, $30 an hour. Play with these numbers as fit. That's $600 a week. That's 2,400 a month. That's a good part-time salary for someone. And they're getting to set their hours. You're just expecting them to show up every week, whether that's 3 days a week, 2 days a week, whatever. Well, hopefully not 2 days a week at 20, because that's efficiency goes down, way down. I would rather them work 5 days at 4 hours a day than work 10 hours in 2 days. Just because of the efficiency and like timing of getting information from clients. It's 2,400 a month. If you were still at 10,000, that same 10,000, and you did 30% with them reviewing, that is 3,000 a month, which is in their best interest, but it might not be in yours. The other thing I found with Megan, I don't know if you encounter this, chime in here. I found that when I was hiring contractors at 30%, the resistance to keeping up with our internal organization was high because it cost them time to file documents, to document, to just overall keep things organized in the workflow systems. I don't have that same resistance at hourly. Is what I found. Like I don't know.
I have not found that, I guess. And I guess it's partially because I have had somebody doing some virtual assistant services for me that was doing some of those types of things. So it hasn't necessarily fallen back on the contractors. And then if it's anything additional outside of the coding, reconciling, stuff like that, I usually have them to track their hourly time. So if we're having to respond to a ton of emails to clients, if it's just a couple, because I only have one of my contractors, or two of my contractors that really email clients anyway, and it's only a couple. So as long as it's not a ton of emails and stuff, they're usually okay with it. But I've also do make sure that at least once or twice a year that I have those contractors track their time, anything they're doing for a couple of months. So we can see exactly where the clients fall. So if we are sending a ton of emails, we're doing a ton of communication, doing a ton of that extra stuff, that we can increase the hourly rate. Because the way I have it set up with my prices and stuff, they usually end up anywhere between $30 to $50 an hour is kind of how it fell. If it hasn't fallen in that, then I know I need to increase my prices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have done that before. So Jennifer, so Megan's pointing out that like pulling statements, if you don't want to be the one pulling statements, hopefully you have accountant access. I wouldn't give contractors I personally don't give contractors like an owner's personal login. If an owner has ever given me a personal login, I make it, it's a policy now that we don't get it ever at all. Because I had a client, I looked up at one point and one of my contractors had like a personal login because we couldn't access it through ours. And I'm like, wow, that's not in policy. Like we don't, I want to be above accusation ever, always. So I never want their personal login. And I did try to hire a virtual assistant to do that before. So maybe that was just one of my failed attempts. So now the contractor just pulls it for herself as she needs it, which works out okay. So that might be a consideration of you might need to hire a support system for that role, because that's not necessarily included in the 30%, is pulling all of those documents, organizing them, and maintaining that if you keep documents. I know some bookkeepers don't. So I'll let you decide that conversation for another day. But okay, she says, thank you. You've given me a lot to think about. So exhausted virtual assistant, it sounds like. I didn't see any other questions. Any other questions in Facebook?
No, nope.
Oh, cool. I will see you guys, Megan, everyone, on the next episode.
Yep.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Megan.
You're welcome.
Jennifer. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.